When somebody loved me, everything was beautiful. Like this movie, which is beautiful and is one of my favorite films of all time. Welcome back to me going through the Toy Story films in anticipation for Lightyear hitting Disney Plus. This is like one of the greatest things I've gotten to do so far is revisiting Toy Story. That's like one of the easiest things. That's like walking up to somebody and being like, "Hey, can you eat this ice cream for me?" And then them being like, "Oh my God, yes, please." It's like 110 outside. Like, I feel like there are people right now in certain parts of the country who are lactose intolerant that if you offered them ice cream, they'd be like, I'll take it. And they just like pour it over their body. They don't even eat it. They just like smear it. They're just smearing ice cream. Like, it's so hot right now. Um, Global warming. Anyway, Toy Story 2. I'm John Stark, Mac Movie Guy, and this is my second, third, fourth, fifth, 18th, 28th, 38th, 48th, 117th look at Toy Story 2. I have no idea how many times I've seen this film, but it's a lot. It's a lot. But this is my first time with audio description, so that's fun. I don't know, that's my first time seeing it blind. I might have caught it just like on TV casually. This is a film that I would just randomly put on and, like Freeform runs stuff like this sometimes. So maybe I kind of felt the same way when I was saying that about Toy Story. I was like, there's something that made me feel like I've watched Toy Story without audio. I've listened to it on Freeform, in a time since losing my vision. Without audio description, like before Disney Plus was the thing, somewhere in that gap that I just wanted to be cheered up, and Disney and Toy Story 2 or something like that happened to be on. Anyway, so the audio description for this was good. Thought it was really interesting that it was provided by the Department of Education. That's the second time I've run into that. I kind of feel like if the Department of Education is paying for the audio description, that it should be for everybody. I don't know why there's a thing where taxpayer dollars go funnel through the Department of Education and then, like, that's not just accessible. Like, why there should be some sort of website where we can all go and access all of the audio description that's ever been paid for by the Department of Education, regardless of what studio it is or what streaming service it's on. That should be available to us as taxpayers, I would think. I mean, do we agree? Like, I don't know why that's not a thing. If you have thoughts on that, throw that in the comments. But yeah, this was oddly described, which also explains why it's not the same narrator as the first Toy Story. Disney just took the one that the Department of Education made. Cool. It's fine. It's Media Access Group. It was a narrator I was unfamiliar with. TJ something. I've already forgotten his name. It's hard for me to remember when I get going into these things, somebody whose name I'm unfamiliar with. But I've seen Toy Story just an ungodly amount of times. This is a film I could, I literally, like, when it's playing, I can play it in my mind. So, like, I just, like, close my eyes and I can see the movie. I can see the shots. I know what these characters look like. I know what the scene looks like. I could picture just all of these little things, all of these scenes, and just linking them together. Like, just even something as silly as Woody's hallucination when Andy, quote, returns from camp and wants to play with Woody again, and his arm is still torn, and then he drops him and it like slow-mos and everything. Like, I could see that whole scene in my head. I could see Woody's rescue and him getting on the back of Buster and going down and to get Wheezy. I can picture the guy, and I remember them looking down at the guy and seeing him move around. I remember the skateboard being kicked back. Oh, the whole thing. You know, I remember the cones walking across the street when they all had to jump on the pad at the same time. Tour guide Barbie and Zorg and just everything. Just all of the cool little things throughout the film. The sequence where Woody gets brushed up by the doll collector. It was just it's I've just seen this film so many times that I can just replay it in my head. It's just nice to just listen to the film, and the audio description helps fill in some of those gaps. Some of it's interesting. I thought it was really funny. I spent so long listening to the Star Wars narration where they would just kind of say who a character was, and it took me a while to figure out that the only time they described the character was in their first appearance. If you watch the film in chronological order, that's when you get the character descriptions. In this film, like, when Woody is looking through the toy chest for his hat, he's referred to as the cowboy doll. And he's not given his name until a little while later. So that way you know he's a cowboy doll. So I guess if Toy Story 2 is your first film, you would know that Woody's a cowboy doll if you didn't know that. That was interesting. I thought that was an interesting choice to make. It didn't really change the film for me, but it could change the film for somebody who didn't watch the first film. I think probably where the audio description failed for me was, oddly enough, in an inconsequential place. It failed for me during the credits. Toy Story 2 did something really cool where it incorporated these outtakes into the film, and it selectively chooses which outtakes to share with you, and in the other time it's reading credits to you. So it's selecting which credits it wants to read, but then it's also selecting which scenes to read. So you're missing out on, so nobody's really completely winning or completely losing, but I would argue that since so many films don't even read credits, that they just drop the credits out, I would argue that reading the outtakes is what should have won in that battle. I don't think that there's a whole ton of people waiting to find out who the executive producers and the editors are for these films as much as they would have enjoyed having the outtakes, all of them, described instead of half of them. So that sort of is the one negative takeaway that I had from the audio description. My one criticism that I have of the audio description. Otherwise, having seen the film like 1,000 times, I felt like it really does describe the film perfectly. Now, there are some, shot in the dark things that I wish it had done it so that people could get it, but there are references that are thrown in, and I talked about this a little bit with Rescue Rangers. It was a frustration that I had because they ignored all of them. Now, Toy Story doesn't have it pervasively, but it does have a couple of cute references where it goes for a gag. Obviously, you'll pick up on the Star Wars one. It's pretty obvious if you've seen Star Wars. You'll get that one on your own. But there's a Jurassic Park reference for the blind audience, and the audio description did nothing really to help that out. In the movie Jurassic Park, there's a scene where they're escaping, and the T-Rex is chasing them down, and the camera cuts really close, really quickly to one of the side view mirrors on a car that says things may appear closer, things may be closer than they actually appear, or whatever. And then it goes to the shot of the T-Rex, like it shows the T-Rex in the I don't know how to say this, in the little side view mirror. I'm trying to explain this to blind people who don't necessarily drive. When you drive, there's a side view mirror. I'm sure you guys know this. It exists. And then you look in it to see what's behind you, like cars and stuff. Well, in Jurassic Park, they look behind and there's a T-Rex, and Spielberg got a really cool shot of the T-Rex in the thing, and it has the little thing that's written on the mirror about objects may be closer than they appear. And then it moves to a shot of Jeff Goldblum being sort of in the back because they've just saved him, and he's doing like the go faster, go faster, go faster thing. It's that scene where the T-Rex is chasing the car, and he feels he's a little bit too close to them. But this movie recreates it by having Rex fall out of the car, and then he's chasing it down, and it cuts and it shows you in the mirror there's a shot of Rex the same way that Spielberg shot the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, where it cuts to him and then it zooms in. It's like the same shot. They recreated it, and it does narrate that scene, but it doesn't narrate it in a way that would make you think this is an homage to Jurassic Park. They're not paying homage to Jurassic Park. So that's just it's a little thing, but this is coming from somebody who's seen Toy Story 2 1,000 times and knows that shot's in there. I didn't need that audio described to me. I was like, oh, that's unfortunate. But yeah, that was one of the moments. Anyway, I said in my Toy Story review, there's a little thing that makes me like Toy Story 2 slightly more than Toy Story 1, even though they're both considered A+ movies. They're both desert island movies. They're both like in my top whatever films of all time, whether it's 25, 50, 100. I feel confident enough to say that it makes that cut. But this one ends up slightly above Toy Story 1. It has a lot to do with Jessie's story, Jessie's background, just her being left behind, which has only grown in strength over the years as people have surmised that the only reason that Andy could possibly like a toy like Woody, who is so much before his time, because if you think about it, Lightyear is based on the fact that Lightyear is the movie that Andy watched before he liked Buzz Lightyear. And he's really young at the time that he gets the Buzz Lightyear toy in the first Toy Story film. Like, he's between 5 and 10. He's still in the age of playing action figures. He's not much older in this film than the first film. But, because his sister hasn't grown up much. So, the idea that Emily, who was Jessie's owner, is Andy's mom, could be the reason why he has Woody in the first place. That Emily could have been the one that left Jessie at the side of the road. Then she grew up, found somebody who is mysteriously missing from the equation. This film is all about a single mom raising Andy. We never talk about Andy's dad, but yeah, and she's just doing it by herself. But she gets him hooked on Woody from Woody's Roundup that she used to watch, and she really used to like Jessie, and she thought, hey, this might be something that you liked. It's sort of like Raggedy Andy was not really my generation, but I had a doll of that was sort of my mom's generation, was Raggedy Ann. So she had one of those, and then I ended up with a Raggedy Andy. So it's, you know, it wasn't quite for me, but it ended up being one of my favorite toys. And it's sort of inexplicable that it is, because there wasn't any Raggedy Andy merchandise at the time to sell me on it. So he ends up liking a toy. Why? But even without that revelation, Jessie's story and when she loved me it's a beautiful song. I love it more than You've Got a Friend in Me. It's so everything. It's such a beautiful song. It's like my favorite Disney song. I know it's not like uplifting, and it doesn't make you want to dance, and I can understand like kids like the other songs, but it's so simple and so beautiful and so well told. And the montage of Jessie with Emily was so beautifully done that it just sold me, and it just broke my heart. I remember seeing this film in theaters when it opened in 1999, and I wasn't even where I was living at the time. I wasn't even home. I was like out traveling, and I saw Toy Story 2 opening weekend, and had to get in there and see it. I ended up seeing it a second time in theaters. That's how much I love this fucking movie. I saw it later, like 2 months later, when it was still in theaters. And but that was my first time, and it was packed, and I was like in the front row looking up at the screen. I was like all the hell the way. I was front row, like off to the side. Like there was nowhere to sit except like dead front row, and I was like in one of the end chairs. So I was like looking over and then up the whole movie. But it's great. Because I just love, like I said, I just love this movie. So, and Jessie, yeah, it moved me. And I was a teenager, and I was like a teenage boy just sitting in there like crying during When She Loved Me, and thinking about like, damn, did I lose any toys? What if my toys went through that? Like, do they think I left them behind? Like, damn. It just puts so much in perspective for me. So Toy Story 2 is one of those films where legitimately, when I answer the question, when people ask me what's your favorite film of all time, I've answered that question with Toy Story 2 before, unapologetically. It's like in my rotating list, I would say probably my top 10. I just kind of rotate through them and answer a different question every single time. And I'm just like, one of these films is what I'm going to say this time. I love that it even references another one of my favorite films, Jurassic Park. So that's also way up there for me. And has inspired and driven a lot of who I am. So has Toy Story, and Pixar. The beginning of Pixar has really formulated who I am as a film critic. That's why this is like one of the longest reviews I've ever done. Is because this is Toy Story 2 for me. I could talk this could go on for hours. I could do hours talking about Toy Story 2 and just the greatness of adding all the characters. And I haven't even talked about Bullseye and how he gets added into the franchise. And I could go on to tangents about how at Disney World for years, when the characters were walking around, people would walk up and say Andy's coming, and Toy Story characters would drop. And then they finally had to stop that policy because it was getting dangerous. But you could actually walk up for a while to Toy Story characters, to Woody, Buzz, and Jessie, and they would drop if you said Andy's coming. And yeah, so it's I like this film, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. It's on Disney Plus. If Lightyear turns out not to be good, just go back and watch the first two Toy Stories, even the first three. I like Toy Story 3. It's just it doesn't didn't hit me the same way the other two did. We'll talk about that in my Toy Story 3 review and why it didn't quite work for me in the same way and why it's not like an eternal favorite of mine. Like, take this shit with me to the grave for a favorite of mine. But I still love it. So it's just a notch below. I'm going to give, I already said it, but I always do this part of the review anyway. I'm going to give Toy Story 2 an A+. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I will finish my Toy Story reviews before Lightyear. And you can check out more reviews from me on macmovieguy.com. You go to the audio description project and find out what movies are audio described and where you can watch them. And you can go to the adna.org and see who's narrating what and what else they've narrated. And that's it for me today. I will see you in my next review of Toy Story 3.